All right, everyone. Welcome. Okay, so welcome. This is special. Just 1 minute here. Welcome to another episode in Key to Redemption. This one is called The Tranquil Warrior. So this is going to be episode number 20. I am missing a few. I was out of missing in action for about 2 weeks. I went away and I thought I'm going to be able to give classes when I'm away, but there was a problem with Wi-Fi connection and all that stuff. So I just let go and I didn't give those classes. So we were in episode 17. I only gave one class and a tiny bit of a second class, and I'm missing quite a few. That was the Dvar Malchus in Parshas Akev. And then, so that was unfinished business, which we have to complete. Then Parshas Re'eh and Shoftim were the 2 weeks I was away. And now this is Parshas Seitzei. It's always difficult to get the engine going again. It was very hard for me to sit down today and commit again to doing these classes, but Kolas Chalas Kashas, all beginnings. And if you make an interruption of something, then it's a beginning all over again. Like everybody knows, when you get off the treadmill, to start it again is difficult, but here we are. Hopefully today is going to be the only difficult part, and then it's going to go smoothly for the next, as long as it takes to Mashiach to come, hopefully already before we even start the class today. So this is the Dvar Malchus of Parshas Seitzei. So it's going to be it again. I don't have episode 19, I don't have episode 18, and I don't have the following the completion of episode 17, but Bezrat Hashem. Now let's move on to this. It's a fascinating talk where the Rebbe connects the unique type of avoda, the unique types of service that we can serve God during the time that we're right now in the twilight zone, right? As the exile ends and the redemption begins, we're given a phenomenal ability to be able to serve Hashem in a complete different type of service in which we are experiencing the reward simultaneously with the work. And for that reason, even when we're going to war, even if there are elements in this world that we still have to overpower and we still have to subdue, there is no anxiety, there is no stress, there is no sense of insecurity in all of this, because the reward and the absoluteness of the victory, the truth of our mission and of what we're doing is so true by us and so real by us that victory is already sensed from the very, very beginning. And for that reason, our service is a tranquil service. So it might be intense, powerful, but at the same time in a state of total relaxation. So again, like all these talks that we are learning about in this series called Key to Redemption, they're all have this key quality of Mashiach to it, in which there is a unification between the finite and the infinite. It's paradoxical. Everything the Rebbe talks about in this particular, that we are now entering into the time that we're in, is all paradoxical. And that's what's so powerful. So let's take a look at the Parshas Seitzei talk. So even just this that the Rebbe picks up on, and he bases the entire talk on, in this parsha, is something that I don't think anybody ever addressed in all of Torah Jewish scholarship. It's a real original, and I'm not saying the answer is original. The answer, of course, is original. The Rebbe is always original, but even just what he's addressing, what's posing the problem, what's difficult to understand, and what's leading us to, what's triggering this entire in-depth evaluation of the Torah portion, is something, usually these are questions that others also ask. This is something that is like unique I don't think anybody ever touched upon this because it really wouldn't bother anybody. The Rebbe does bother. It shows on a very unique way of living. And the thing over here that the Rebbe is asking is that this week Shabbos, we're going to read two Torah portions. One of them is Parshas Ki Seitzei, and the other one is Parshas Ki Savo, like we do every Shabbos. Every Shabbos we read two Torah portions. Shabbos morning, Saturday morning, when we come to Shul, we read the weekly Torah portion. And what's unique about Shabbos is that we read the entire Torah portion. Unlike Mondays and Thursdays, we read only a small little part of it during the Torah reading. So we read the whole Torah portion. But then in the afternoon service, by the Mincha service, we read the next Torah portion. And we do it every Shabbos. It's always by Mincha. We start reading the next week's Torah portion. In this week, since it's Parshas Ki Seitzei, in Deuteronomy Ki Seitzei, next week's Torah portion is Ki Savo. So we're reading both. Okay. What's the problem? The Rebbe is being disturbed, so to say, or bothered by the energies that seem to be conflicting. The messaging seems to be contradictory messaging. And to have them both happening at the same week seems to create a little bit of a friction. The Rebbe is going to explain how these seems to be incompatible friction. Like each one on its own would be no problem. But to put the two together, they're rubbing against each other. Why? Because the themes in the two Torah portions are total opposite. As a result of this question, now, usually everybody asks this question, people ask such type of questions when in the same verse or in the same Torah portion, you have this kind of an energy, that kind of an energy. You'll sometimes have that question. Not that much. It's the Rebbe's type of questions in general. However, to take the fact that Shabbos morning we're reading one, and Shabbos afternoon we're reading another one, and the two energies, now, who would ask a question like this? Only someone who is so living with the Torah portion that you sense a certain discomfort from the fact that suddenly the messaging is completely different. The messaging of, I'm gonna give a brief before we read it. I'm not reading inside, but I'm gonna do a reading. Before we do a reading of the actual talk, I'm just going to do a little pre-introduction, and that is that I got thrown off with that phone call. So let me shut this. No ringer, nothing. When you're reading the beginning, the Torah portion, Parshas Ki Seitzei, which is talking about going out to war, and and some of the other verses are continuing and talk about like a little bit of a hostile type of a situation. The energy or the sense of tuning into the Torah portion, showing up to assimilate the ideas into your life, it's calling for you. It's calling for the person to put on a suit of armor and get ready for war. Girdle yourself with your ammunition, put on your weapons, and ready. Show up for military service. That's the sense. The next Torah portion, and these are Parshas Ki Savo, which run back to back. Ki Seitzei and Ki Savo. Ki Savo talks about the Jewish people entering the land of Israel and entering into a state of settling in the land and the bountiful blessings that will be and are there for all of the community and every individual as they live in the state of ultimate tranquility and peacefulness. How they come and they thank God, and they're bringing baskets of fruits called the Bikurim as a sign of gratitude and thankfulness to Hashem. Now the energies over here are so opposite. This is the ultimate tranquility and peacefulness. And this is the warrior, the strength, sense of battle, a sense of going to fight for something. It's now, okay, there are times in life when you need this, when you're going out to war, times in life when you're sitting back and you're reclining and you're, taking it all in, you're enjoying life, you're reaping the rewards of the hard labor that you've had, and now you have a moment. You're sitting on a rocking chair, you're sipping a little wine or a glass of tea, and you're in a state of tranquility, and everything is good. So in our service of God, in our connection to Hashem, we also have, King David was a warrior, yet he prays, he says, on tranquil waters, you should lead me. So we have that moment, a moment of tranquility. The problem the Rebbe has, which is unique, is the fact that in the morning we're reading this Torah portion in the afternoon. So if you're really, really tuning in to the energy, and you're not just reading it, it says so in the Torah, but you're actually living it, you're jarred by the extremes. Like it doesn't sit well. It's like when you're in a state of war, you can't relax. You're not in a state of tranquility. And if you're in a state of tranquility, don't talk to me about war right now. How do they both come together in one shot? That's the question that he's going to deal with. And the Rebbe is going to dig so deep as a result of this, and he's going to uncover a depth and a state of existence where we can be simultaneously in both places. In a state of war, like we find ourselves right now in the twilight zone, right before Mashiach comes, or as Mashiach is issuing in, there's still a lot of elements in this world that we need to kind of overpower. But at the same time, we're already breathing Mashiach's air, and therefore we can be in a state of tranquility. Not 1 minute like this and 1 minute like that, but actually an impossibility of a combination of both of them together. That's what he's going to develop out of all of this, which is really cool. So let's take a look. So he says, he begins the talk as follows, that the order of the reading of the Torah is that the place where you complete reading on Shabbos day, you start reading by the afternoon, by Shabbos, by Mincha, you start reading the next Torah portion. So for example, the first Shabbos we read Bereshis, and we read the entire first portion of Genesis, Bereshis, and then the second Torah portion, which we start Shabbos by Mincha the following week, but we started already on Shabbos Bereshis. At the Mincha service, we start reading Parshas Noah, and so on and so forth. So there's two Torah portions. Question over here is regarding the two Torah portions that come this week. They seem like that they present such complete different types of an energy. Number one, he says immediately, you don't even have to go into the parsha, just looking at their names. The first Torah portion is called Ki Seitzei, when you will go out. Second Torah portion is called Ki Savo, when you will come back, when you will come in. Now, going out and going in are two opposite energies. You're going out, you're putting on your coat, you're putting on your boots. You're going out, you're going out. Coming in means you're coming back to your home. You're going inside. So it's like you say to someone, when you say someone is confused, you say there's an expression, you don't know if they're coming or going, right? That's what it feels like over here. Am I going or am I coming? So you say, well, first in the morning you go out, in the afternoon you're coming back. Ki Seitzei, Ki Savo. Okay. But Rebbe says already over here there's a conflict in the themes. Secondly, if you look into when we say we're going out, it's not just going out to the market. The going out that the Torah is talking about in Parshas Ki Seitzei is going out to war. As it says, Ki Seitzei l'molchama alovech, and the coming in is the coming into your land, settling your land. And we know it's the special mitzvah of bringing Bikurim, which was only applied after the Jewish people were already vanquished all of their enemies and completely settled the land. Only then, when you're completely settled and you're comfortable and everybody's sitting under their Ishtachas Gafnov, Ishtachas Tanoso, as the verse says, a person under their vine and a person under their fig tree, which means that you have no worry and no concern in the world. At that state, the time has come for you to thank God and come and bring a a basket of thanksgiving to Hashem. All right? So we're talking about two opposite experiences. So it's not just going out and coming in, but the content of the going out and the content of the going in is very different. He says, because even though when we're talking about a war over here, we're talking about a war when God is assisting you. So it's not, he's minimizing the insecurity, the restlessness, the fear, the anxiety of war, because the verse continues and it says, when you go out to war, God will give your enemies into your hands. So if a person knows that God will give his enemies into hands, that's a little bit of a relaxer. That takes away some of the anxiety. But the Rebbe says, notwithstanding that, all of that, war is still war. And if war is still war, there is this. It's a state of upheaval. It's a state that is not relaxing. It's a state of commotion, an intense state of commotion. So much so that Maimonides says that when a warrior, when a soldier, a Jewish soldier is going to war, he is obligated to disconnect from everything that is comforting in his life, all of his possessions, and primarily his thoughts about his family. You know, what crazy is this coziness, and this coziness is our closest people to us, our spouse, our children. They all create this base, this comfort. Rambam says if you're going to be thinking about them, then it's going to disturb you in the war, because you're not going to want to put yourself in danger, because you're going to, God forbid, you don't want to jeopardize your life because you're thinking about your children. So Rambam says you're obligated to kind of delete all of that and be focused only on war, which means you are in the most uncomfortable place possible because you're just determined to fight and so on and so forth. The opposite of thinking about all your blessings and all the goodness in your life, which is the facilitator or what brings about the tranquility. That's war. That's on the one hand. And the second Torah portion, which is Parshas Kisavo, is the epitome of tranquility, because it's talking about, as we said earlier, when you come into the land after everybody's already settled in their own places, with their own part in the land of Israel, and you're blessed already with abundance, and the crops have yielded, and you're seeing God's bountiful blessings, and you're enjoying, and you're in a state of complete satisfaction and calmness, to the point that you come, and as the verse says, V'samachta b'chol hatov, you rejoice in all the goodness. The ultimate state of peacefulness and tranquility. How do we have these two messaging in one Shabbos? So where am I supposed to be on this Shabbos? How can I be in two places like this? So, you can answer, this is the morning and this is the afternoon, but even in one day, it's hard to change and to flip and be in a complete different, and have such a transition. Now, this is in general. Now, if we take these ideas and we strip them from their physical meaning and we apply them more to a broader sense of a person's purpose in life, because we know the Torah has its immediate meaning, but the Torah also has a broader meaning, which applies to all times. For example, these wars that the verse is talking about is not applicable today, but the spiritual war is applicable today. So it says in Hasidic teachings that when it says when you will go out to war, it's very personal. It's each and every one of us going out to war. When do we go out to war? And what does it mean when you go out to war? It's when our souls, our pristine souls that were once sitting in heaven and enjoying God's ultimate light, basking in God's light and in the glory of Hashem, and souls are taken from that very peaceful place, and God says, time to go out in the mission. And where do you have to go? I'm sending you to a faraway land, to a hostile land, a place that is full of entities and forces that are negating holiness, that are fighting against holiness and godliness. And our job is to neutralize all these enemies, to overpower them, and to conquer this material, physical world for God. That's the war that we're going out to. That's the higher meaning of these verses. So here as well, if we're talking about the spiritual war, the soul descending into this world is very stressful to the soul. It actually says that the most stress a person has in this life, I don't know, I heard this recently from someone was saying this from a doctor. The most stressful experience of life is actually coming through the birth canal, being born. It's the most anxiety. It's like there's no trauma in a person's life as powerful as that trauma of birth, just being born. Poor baby. That's why they cry when they're born, right? It's very intense. So we're going out to war, going out to battle. Now, on the other hand, especially when the ultimate Seitzei is one thing when the soul comes down into this world, especially if it's, as we just studied, if you remember, we studied this past Thursday night as well, we discussed this, when the soul comes down into this world, not in the time when the temple is standing, when spirituality is so strong in the world, but in the time of exile, the time when the forces of darkness are in full force, and holiness, at least externally, seems to be very weak and very broken. And in this state, for sure, going out to war is an extremely difficult and hard and stressful and it presents enormous trauma and anxiety to the soul. On the other hand, the second Torah portion is when you will come into the land. What is that referring to spiritually? Referring to a person already having overcome all the obstacles and difficulties and reached a certain space. You've already cleared the environment. You've already settled and created within this world a home. You found the right community, supporting community. You're amongst good people, amongst friends. And yourself, you've already established yourself that you can create a space where all the unholiness is not reaching. You have like a fortress. That's the idea. Coming to the land, holy land of Israel. And you have all the blessings. You're reaping the fruits. What is it referring to, the fruits? All the benefits of living a holy, godly life. It's all already available. For example, a person moving into a new city, a new place where there's anti-Semitism, or there is nothing Jewish there, and there's a lot of other things, and people that are upset that you're there, and you're trying to start creating. That's called going out to war. But when you're moving into an environment, for instance, where there's already everything that one can ask for, there's an enormously supportive environment. There is a community, and there is kosher food, and there is a mikveh, and there's classes for Torah, and people are actually inspiring you to join those classes. And there's such an amazing rabbi and an amazing people, and everything is just so conducive to holiness. That means when you're coming into the land, similar to going into the land of Israel. So the work then is not stressful at all to the soul. The soul finds itself really at peace. So again, these are two opposites. And it brings forth a complete different experience within ourselves as we settle into these two different situations, to these opposite situations. So when that's the case, how do we kind of embrace these two experiences together? Seems to be a world apart. To make matters worse, or to make the question stronger, the Rebbe says. When the verse says, when you will come into the land, it's not just talking about coming into the land of Israel in the past. It's also alluding to coming into the land of Israel in the days of Mashiach, which means the ultimate settling into the land of Israel, which at that time we're going to be past, all the darkness in the world is going to be vanquished, and all concealment is going to be gone. And the world is going to be already in its ultimate utopian, perfect state of revealed godly light. In that case, it's not even going to be a time of labor and work. We're not going to have to make the world godly because the world will be godly already. So what's going to be life then? It's going to be the reward. It's going to be the time of Hashem's bountiful blessing and God's revelation to each and every one of us. Comes out that the experience of a Haya Kisavo is not just a more pleasant environment to do the work. That was what we said earlier. A pleasant, supportive environment where you can get your spiritual work done. study Torah, do mitzvot without any interference. Unlike the state of going to war, where you have all kinds of obstacles from within and without. However, so that itself, two types of service, that itself is different. But especially if we add on that what? That coming into the land is also referring to the ultimate, the Messianic age, and the time when there isn't going to be any more labor and work of making this world holy, because the world will be holy already, and we're just going to be enjoying its godliness and its holiness. This is a time of reward. So the work and the reward are definitely two different experiences. How can we have one Shabbos that includes or contains within it these two opposing, seemingly opposite experiences of reward and work? Now, this contradiction, the Rebbe finds it not only in the Shabbos, but he also finds it in the ethics of fathers that we studied this week. And this requires a little introduction. And that is that the custom, and I mentioned this earlier in the earlier classes, there is a custom to study ethics of fathers, which are 6 chapters during the weeks between Pesach, Passover, and Rosh Hashanah. So between from about April till about September, during this time, or October, this time, we do, during all the summer weeks, we do every week another chapter of ethics of fathers. Now, in Ethics of Fathers, there are 6 chapters. So it takes 6 weeks to complete the whole thing. The summer, there is, I don't know, maybe 24 weeks, almost a half a year. So as a result of that, there is a few cycles. So we do it at least 3 times. We go through the Ethics of Fathers. But then in the end, there's 3 weeks left over, always. So we can't complete the full cycle. So what do? We pair up 2 chapters per week. So the first of the 3 extra weeks, we do chapter 1 and 2. Second week, we do 3 and 4. And week before Rosh Hashanah, we do 5 and 6. So the Rebbe now takes a look at this week, the Parshas Seitzei week, which is on our calendar this week as well. We're going to pair up chapter 1 and chapter 2. Now, when you pair up chapter 1 and chapter 2, according to the Rebbe's understanding, they become like one chapter. It's not like we're reading 2 chapters. They become like 2 of them become 1. And here we have a problem. Same idea. Because the messaging of chapter 1 is similar to Parshas Seitzei, and the messaging of chapter 2 is similar to Parshas Kisavo. And they have the same, the Rebbe finds the same conflicting energy. The beginning of chapter 1 talks all about Moshe bringing the Torah to the Jewish people, and as a result of us receiving the Torah, us implementing the Torah and establishing it in the world with all the trials and tribulations that are involved in implementing the Torah in a non-Torah world, in an uninviting environment. The end of the second Torah portion, the conclusion of the second, concludes with a statement about reward. V'dan, you should know, shamatan scharen shel tzadikim la'asad lavo, that the reward of the tzadikim, of the righteous, is going to be in the future. So we're talking about the reward. So again, same type of question. Here we're talking. We're in the beginning of we're in the midst of the very maybe beginning, or if not beginning, we're like right smack in the middle of the work. And at this point, we don't think about vacation. We don't think about the final reward that we're going to get in the end. That's coming later. How can we, in one Shabbos, infuse us with 2 energies, the energy of work and labor and the reward? Same idea like in Parshas Seitzei and Kisava. So the explanation to that is, and it says in Perek Daled, as follows: that the reading of the second Torah portion this week by Mincha, which is Parshas Kisavo, is actually coming to give us commentary and enhanced understanding of what we're capable of when we are doing the work of Seitzei. In other words, it's not necessary. Our service of God, which includes enlisting in the army, which includes major battles, fierce battles, with all kinds of aspects that might be threatening our spiritual well-being or non-complying with the godly in the world, whether it's our own evil inclination, our own resistance, or the resistance from the outside. Notwithstanding the fact that we have this ferocious battle, yet Parshas Kisava was, being that it's in the same week as Parshas Seitzei, it's coming to tell us that it's not necessary that it should be performed, that this work should be done, that this whole procedure should be in a state of anxiety and stress. That the work itself can be in total tranquility and peacefulness. Although you're in the midst of a powerful battle with bullets in the crossfire, where bullets whizzing right back to your ear and bombs falling at the same time, and yet you're in an ultimate state of tranquility. So what does that mean? How's that possible? How is it possible? The Rebbe says in the terminology of the Mishnah in the second chapter of Ethics of the Fathers that we mentioned earlier, which mentions about reward, says you should know that the ultimate reward for the righteous is going to be in the world to come. So the simple meaning of that is that it's always good to know, especially when life gets difficult and hard, and the expectations from Hashem for each and every one of us is so high. So it can sometimes help if we know that, in the end, it's going to be really beautiful. It's good to know that there's going to be a reward. And even if it's hard now, God is never going to withhold of us the reward. We might not see it today. It might be difficult. Not necessarily always that someone that makes the right choices has the most easiest and beautiful life. There are times that are difficult, yet we know that in the end there will be reward. That's the simple meaning. You should know. However, according to this is the Rebbe's way of learning it, the word da means knowing, and according to Hasidism, the real meaning of knowing means attach yourself. To know something means to be attached to it. So when you say know that the reward of the righteous is in the future, in the world to come, means attach yourself already now, be connected, sense, and be one with the tranquility and the peacefulness and the pleasure and the delight of the future, of the reward. In other words, even though the reward is going to happen then and not now, we can tune our souls into that state of reward already now. And that's the meaning. And that's what Kisavo is. By Kisavo showing up on the very same week, like we're reading Seitzei, it's coming to change the flavor of the warriors. The attitude, the sense, it's going to completely dismiss and vanquish the angst and the anxiousness, the nervousness of the situation, and already introduce complete tranquility and calmness, peace and calmness. Now, what we said now is that Seitzei on its own would not give that to us. If you're just reading Parshas Seitzei, we wouldn't open up and begin the reading of Parshas Kisavo on Shabbos afternoon. Seitzei on its own can leave us with anxiety. It's Kisavo that's introducing. So the Rebbe says, no. The truth is, in Seitzei itself, it is already alluding to the time of the reward, hinting to the idea that the reward could be accessed already today. Because in Seitzei, there is a verse that implies that when you pay your workers, if you hire workers, if you have employees that are working for you, you must pay them on the very same day that they've done their work, but the labor has been performed. Now, halachically, that means that when the work is over, You have 12 hours to come up with the payment, and you have to pay them immediately. You can't delay the wages of a worker. It's a mitzvah mentioned in this week's Torah portion, Parshas Seitzei. It says, "Biyomo titein scharo." On the day of the person's work, you should give his reward. You're not allowed to pass 12 hours. It means it says that the employer has 12 hours time from when the work was over to seek payment, to seek monies to pay. And then after 12 hours, whether he has to borrow it or whatever, he must pay the wages of his workers. That's according to Torah law. It's the very same day. However, the way the Rebbe is learning it spiritually, the Yom Mo means actually in the day, which means that spiritually it can mean that at the very same time that we're doing the work, we're already tuning into the reward. Even though officially it seems like it's two different periods. And that too is implied this week's in the Torah portion, in which we say that when the sages tell us, the Rebbe says in footnote number 21, a very interesting footnote. In our Parsha, it speaks about shooing away the mother bird. So over there it says, if you do this mitzvah, you will live a good life and you'll live a long life. God will be good to you. You're going to live a long life. So the sages say that this doesn't mean you're going to live a physical good life in this world alone, not necessarily going to have longevity, but it's referring to after the resurrection. When God will bring us back down here, then we will all live a very long life in the physical world. And the sages derive it because they ask a question. What happens? The sages say there are two mitzvahs that God explicitly promises longevity. One is for honoring one's parents, and the other one is for shooing away the mother bird and taking the babies, the chicks or the little birds. So the sages say, what happens if it happens that a father asks his son to go up to the attic and shoo away the mother bird? In other words, and here you have a combination of both these two mitzvahs coming together to a person. And the person goes up the ladder and the person falls down and he dies. And in that case, the Torah seems to be falling short on his promise. It said the guy will live a long life. And here you have a combination of two mitzvahs that both promise long life, and the guy was performing both of them, and in the midst of doing it, he fell and died. So the sages say, well, why do you think that's going to happen? I mean, you're asking a hypothetical question. If that's going to happen, then the Torah, then when it says you're going to live a long life, it's not being fulfilled. Maybe it's not going to happen because the Torah says you're going to live a long life. So that's not going to happen. The guy's not going to fall off the ladder. So the sages say that the sage who asked this question, his name was Rabbi Yaakov, he actually saw it happen with his own eyes. He witnessed a father send the son up to go shoo away the mother bird. While the person was going up on the ladder fell, he fell down, and the person died. He banged his head or whatever, and the person died doing the mitzvah, doing both mitzvahs in one shot. So it wasn't just a hypothetical question. He witnessed it. And therefore, the answer had to be that it doesn't mean in this world, it means in the future. So what do we see from here? That generally we say that there are two eras. There's an era of work, and during the work, you sweat and you toil, and you don't necessarily see the reward. The reward is in a later period of time, in the time of the resurrection, at a latter time, in the world that's completely Shabbos. That's the way we always studied, we'd always learn. Yet, by the fact that Parshas, from this that it says in this week's Parsha, in the very day you have to give reward, then it can't be tomorrow you'll get the reward has to be today. That means that it's possible, and this is the idea, that we can open up our consciousness to a level, as we're going to soon see, the method. The Rebbe is going to teach an incredible method of doing this. It's actually going to be a form of a meditation. You can really turn this into a meditation. A form of a meditation where the future, which is the tomorrow of time, could be accessed already today. And that's the meaning when the Mishnah tells you, Vida, you should know that the reward of the tzaddikim is in the future, means connect yourself. Knowing means to connect. Yes, for most, generally, without this deeper mode of consciousness or deeper state of consciousness, or without doing this meditation, these are two separate experiences. One is full of anxiety, stress, and difficulty. And then comes the latter time. The Seitzei and the Kisavo are two separate Torah portions belonging to two separate weeks. However, a deeper understanding of life will enable us to simultaneously live in both worlds. Especially, the Rebbe is going to say, in our time right now, when we are at the intersection of these two worlds. So right now, for sure, we can live them both at the same time. How does that work? We will understand this, he says in chapter number 5, by further analyzing two very powerful questions. We'll leave it after these two questions. For the next class, we'll get the answer. When it says in the beginning of our Torah portion, when you go out to war on your enemy, the sages interpret, and Rashi states, that what kind of war is this referring to? It's talking about a war that we chose voluntarily, as opposed to an obligatory war. There are certain wars that the Jewish people fought, which was an obligation on them to fight. Everybody was required to go to war. It was a war of a mitzvah, Malchus mitzvah. It's considered a mitzvah, and that was, for example, God commanded the Jewish people to conquer the land of Israel. It was God gave it to us, and He wanted to give us through a conquest. We needed to go to take the war. We had to go conquer it from the ancient natives that were living there, take it from them, and make it our land. Another example of a commanding a war that's a mitzvah is the war against Amalek. Amalek must be destroyed, and therefore we were told to go fight against Amalek and eradicate them from the face of the earth. That was a holy war, okay? Which means sanctioned by God as a must. And it's a different type of a war, where one is going to battle because we elect to go to battle. We want to expand the land of Israel. Whatever the resources are not enough, we need an expansion, we're going to war. You don't have to, but if you choose to, there is a certain procedure. The high court has to, like kind of the Senate, the Jewish Senate has to agree to it. It has to be a prophet needs to communicate with God and get the okay. They would ask the Kohen, the high priest would check with the breastplate and communicate. There were various different procedures. And when all of them were in agreement, then the Jewish people were able to go to war, an elected war. So the sages say that the law stated over here about this going to war and seeing a Gentile woman falling in love with this woman, and the soldier sees this woman, how he's allowed to take her into his property, and then he's allowed to be intimate with her, but then he has to marry her, certain restrictions, the whole story, okay? So this particular law applies by a war that we're going out of our own volition, not an obligatory war. During an obligatory war, the law is different. Not going to get into how it's different, but it's a whole different story. So that's what the sages say. Now, the question the Rebbe is asking is, didn't we say earlier that going to war over here is referring to God sending our souls down into this world, for each and every one of us to make our space in our world holy, beginning with our own body, physical body, to comply with God's will, and then to spread that out in our environment, to increase holiness and godliness in the environment? So if that's the case, it's our soul being sent into the battlefield. How can we refer to that as a voluntary war, as an elected war? Something you elected on your own? Do we have a choice? Does anybody have a choice? God dispatches our soul down here. The angels take the soul and they bring it down into the body. Did we volunteer to come down? It's not that way. It's not a it doesn't seem like it's voluntary. It doesn't seem like it's a mission that is elected or volunteered for. We're not volunteers in this world. We were agents. We were sent down here, and we have to fulfill what we were sent to do. So in that case, how can we refer to it as a a voluntary war. Milchemes Rishus. The next question the Rebbe asks is, we spoke earlier about reward. We know that we are due to receive a enormous reward. The Rebbe says, but hold on, what do you mean? For what? For doing what we were created to do? What is a reward? If I have a job or something important to me that I need to be done, and for whatever reason I can't do it myself, I don't want to do it myself, or whatever it is, I put out a notice and say, whoever wants to help me, if you volunteer to help me, I'll reward you. Right? I'll pay you, or I'll just give you a nice reward, or whatever it is, because you're doing something you didn't have to do. But does a master have to reward his servant for showing up to work every day? Absolutely not. We're not used to the concept of a servant, but a true servant belongs to the master. So the servant must obey the master. It's part of his possessions. We are called servants of God. It's not something that God claims ownership of us. And he has all the right to do so. And regarding the Jewish people, it says, Kali b'nei Yisrael avadim. Hashem says, you are my servants. And if you're my servants, then you owe me to get whatever I ask of you to do. So when we do the mitzvahs and we live the godly life that God wants us to do, it's an obligation. Similar to the earlier question. If so, why do we have a concept that there will be rewards for mitzvahs? If we would be employees that are volunteering to do the work when we don't have to, it's one thing. Now, the idea that we are servants, the Rebbe says, it's even more than a servant. Because a servant to a master, the master owns the servant, but the master is not responsible for the very existence of the servant. The master didn't create the servant. With God, God created us from absolute nothing. That means our entire existence is because of God's will and of Hashem's. If so, we owe him our everything. Of course, we owe to certain. We have no other life but to live his agenda of what he has to give her. Okay, he gave us free will and he gives us an ability not to, because for whatever reason, but the obligation, of course we're obligated. If that's the case, why do we deserve a reward? Why are we rewarded? According to Torah, we will be rewarded. So the whole concept of reward doesn't make any sense. These two questions presented are going to lead us to a very deep, amazing, revolutionary idea in the soul's relationship to God. For that, we will have to tune into the next class, which will hopefully come tomorrow.